not only having the most fun band name to say over and over again, have also deposited another neat album into the field of, pop punk? Pop hardcore? Indie rock? Not like it matters. If it's good screamy guitar music, it's good screamy guitar music. PUP aren't necessarily the saviors of emo-flavored power pop music, more than they are just the one on the school grounds you'd much rather hang out with instead of the others, and fair enough, they're at least self-aware, grasping the lacrosse pole of sardonic humour, and sport a willingness to have a very serious staring contest with demotivation, even if it means they lose. I adored the band's rickety, explosive album from 2016, The Dream Is Over, a series of honest meltdowns being vented in order to reassure oneself and look to the better days where you wouldn't have to worry about conflict between band members, or grieving a pet chameleon, or stress with working in the music industry. Unfortunately, these are all very common for Stephen Babcock and the crew. The title Morbid Stuff makes you think of horrific visuals, grotesque, the kind of shit you'd see on LiveLeak. Humorously, Babcock deals with the more familiar, the everyday pits of active lifestyle that end up being clouded by ennui and a complete lack of ability to express oneself emotionally without feeling like a big marble slab of injustice. Things suck, and none of the lyrics have ever hid that away on a high shelf. At the start of Free at Last, he yells the word shaking as if he's, shook. Which is a big help. Morbid Stuff is an album that really should be judged on its own terms, and yet I couldn't help but notice that the approach to songwriting, and perhaps the presentation in general, was a lot more straightforward and to the point than The Dream Is Over, so you'll be hit a lot easier with those anthemic hooks and the millennial whoops that won't seem to go away from modern rock like a mosquito that you just can't swat. But unfortunately, all of this sacrifices a large slice of what I enjoyed about PUP in the first place. The Dream Is Over almost sounded like an adventure. The uncomfortable turbulence of the band's pursuits of musical success was something that I could feel in the 3/4 riff of Sleep in the Heat, the frustrated yells of why can't we just get along on the opening track, and the defeat instilling crescendo on the final track Pine Point. It was like you were with them on this futile journey, which made the grief so much more close and devastating. Morbid Stuff is good, it's definitely good, but it's also lacking in that feeling, in favour of writing catchier, more to the point songs more often, which honestly isn't bad at all. I just accepted right away that I'd prefer the other album, and that's okay. I'm a strong boy, I can handle this. PUP are still good at writing melodies, both for lead guitar and vocals, such that the first 5 tracks on here are genuinely fantastic through and through. Scorpion Hill with its slow down and speed up pace leaves it as one of the tracks here that really recaptures that sense of adventure I was scouting out for. Free at Last has one of the most powerfully wonderful sounding hooks of the year, in contrast to its lyrics, which are really demotivating and toxic. But that's exactly the idea, really. It's a juxtaposition. You come around to the second half of the album where full-blown meltdown is hosted, and suddenly we're smacked with one of the weightiest, most bass-heavy instrumentals, as Babcock's yelling is aimed at himself, and it leads him to sporadic bursts of the most blunt frustration on the album, ended by a chugging riff that'd feel at home on any heavy metal revival album. No, not that one though. Being trapped in a cycle of self-destruction is toxic, but when PUP are renowned for channeling it into their music, they find themselves trapped in a chasm of confliction. You wouldn't want to fetishize ruination, and they scrutinize the way that they themselves write about it on this album. At this album's best, it's honest and melodically pleasing to the ears. At the worst, it's just standard fare. But standard fare for PUP is a cut above the rest of the knife rack. The chorus of Bare Hand sounds teary-eyed, and the line about rolling your words through my cheeks like a mouthful of poison is a perfect way to describe you repeating somebody else's toxic words to yourself so often that each time it deflates your confidence more and more. Paying attention to moments like this helped me realize that Morbid Stuff doesn't need to be compared so heavily to its predecessor, much like I've been doing the past few minutes. It actually manages to achieve the same self-reflections, but in a less exhausting and more accessible manner. A 6 out of 10 popped up for PUP.